it had a major impact on me to see that, go to the funeral home and see Bob's father laying in that coffin, and knowing, because he was over 50, because he was 2 years away from retirement, because he was considered obsolete, he wasn't needed anymore. He was let go. What I'd like to do is, I mentioned, I like to start out with a relatively short story. And again, it's my first real contact with ageism. And it started way back when I was in high school. I was going to John Marshall High School on Cleveland's west side. And one thing that I did every single day, every single morning, I got up, I went over to my friend Bob's house, and I'd collect Bob, and then he and I would just go off to school. It was, I think it was probably my junior, senior year. This happened for those 2 years. Well, I go over to Bob's house every single morning, and I'd climb up the stairs. He lived in a two-family, climb upstairs, and there would be Bob's father sitting at the dining room table. And he'd be sitting there, and he'd be drinking his big cup of coffee, and he'd be wearing his workies, what we call workies. And for some of you who don't know what workies are, they were basically his blue clothes that he wore when he worked in a machine shop. And I remember this big guy, 6'5", looked like a grasshopper, sitting at this table in his workies, drinking his coffee. And this happened for, as I mentioned, just months and months, and it went into years, till one day I went over to Bob's house. And his father was sitting at that table, but he wasn't wearing his blue workies. He was in a robe, and he was in his PJs, and he wasn't drinking a cup of coffee. His father was drinking a bottle of beer. And for me, that wasn't the world I came from in the morning. That's not something that we did at my house. But I remember looking at him, and I was thinking, well, maybe this guy is on vacation. Who knows? So we leave the house. Bob and I, we start walking down the street, and all of a sudden Bob looks at me. He just looks at me, and I could see in his face he was upset. And he just looks at me, he says, "Guy," which was my nickname back then. He says, "Guy, my dad lost his job." He said, "My dad's upset. My mother doesn't know what to do. My dad started drinking." And I didn't know. I mean, I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid. I don't know what to say. But Bob just looks at me, and I could tell how upset he was. Well, what happens is I find out his father can't find a job. He's looking and he's looking, and he can't find a job. And one day Bob says to me, "You know, Lou, my dad was just 2 years away from retiring, just 2 years away." And I remember the company his father worked at. I remember it very well. That name of the company I'll never forget, and I won't mention it here today. But I remember his father couldn't find a job, and his dad was upset, and he drank more and more and more. And one day Bob says, "Lou, my mom's going to leave my father. We don't know what to do. We just don't know what to do. My dad can't find a job." Well, months go by, 6 months go by, more time goes by. And what happens? Bob's father ends up in the hospital. And I remember Bob telling me, he says, "Lou, my dad's in the hospital." I said, "What's going on?" He says, "We don't know. He was just drinking and drinking. And one day they just came in the emergency room. They came and they took my father to the hospital." Well, time goes by. Summer came. I didn't see Bob's father, didn't see Bob. And then one day I get a call. And Bob's father passed away. It's very sad. To this day, I never forgot that. And to this day, I can tell you this. It had a major impact on me to see that, go to the funeral home and see Bob's father laying in that coffin, and knowing, because he was over 50, because he was 2 years away from retirement, because he was considered obsolete, he wasn't needed anymore. He was let go. And that had a profound effect on me. And to this day, when I think about it, I get upset. And it's one of the reasons I started Over 50 TV. I started Over 50 TV because I know that what happened to Bob's father, what happened to his father, happens to many people who are over 50 years old. People, as they approach retirement, they're considered obsolete. They're thrown away. They're kicked to the curb. Nobody wants them anymore. It's a true story, and it happens every single day.